The camera lingers on the scratch of chair legs against polished wood, a stillness before the storm. A bottle of perfume glints in Tessa's hand, then the sharp hiss punctures the silence. Miles's wild-eyed scream shatters through the room, his small fists rubbing at fiery, stinging eyes. Was cruelty always lurking among the ordinary? Layla Monroe's heart races, engulfed in a cacophony of laughter and biting insults. Why does pain cut deeper when it comes from those meant to protect you? A simple meal, a fleeting spark, how fast everything falls apart. My name is Layla Monroe. At 34, I never imagined my own family could unleash such cruelty on my son. It was just supposed to be a quiet Sunday dinner at my parents' townhouse in Maple Grove. That evening could have been serene, but it turned into a nightmare. Tessa, my sister, unleashed her expensive perfume directly into 4-year-old Miles's unsuspecting eyes. As he screamed a gut-wrenching sound, Helen Barton laughed. If he's blind now, maybe he won't see. He's a burden, too. George Barton didn't hold back either, chiming in with, "Well, at least he smells better now." Before I dive deeper, I want to know where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to subscribe. Life has a bizarre way of revealing who truly belongs in your circle. So let me take you back to that day, how it shattered everything I believed about family. As a child health specialist at Riverside Children's Hospital, I adore my job. It allows me to nurture children while still being there for Miles. He's bright-eyed and endlessly curious, but he's also navigating his own world filled with challenges. Miles has what his children's doctor calls sensory processing differences. It means he's painfully sensitive to sounds, textures, and especially strong smells. Everyday situations can overwhelm him. A loud restaurant, scratchy clothing tags, or that offensive perfume can send him spiraling into meltdowns. Tessa, 2 years older and always the favorite, has seemingly lived a charmed life. A successful marketing executive with a downtown penthouse. She never wanted children, which is her choice, but I've always felt the sting of her disdain for my path. "Throwing away your potential," she scoffed when I revealed my pregnancy. To her, Miles isn't a nephew, he's the situation, a label that cuts deep. Our parents, Richard and Linda Wilson, masters of maintaining appearances, have fostered an environment where love feels conditional. Amid all this, I'm driven by one thing: protecting Miles, challenging this toxic family dynamic that seeks to drown out his light. But will I find the strength to stand against the currents? Will I be able to create a safe harbor for my son? Stay tuned as I share the turning point that changed everything. George Barton built his empire in commercial real estate, while Mom, a former Miss Pennsylvania, clung to her glory days. Their 5-bedroom colonial in the affluent part of town was always pristine, ready for surprise visits from George Barton's business partners or Mom's charity committee friends. They valued success, status, and the opinions of others above all else. My life, however, took a different turn. I married James right after college, dreaming of a perfect life together. When I got pregnant with Miles, James seemed thrilled at first. But when Miles was just 1, I uncovered his affair with a 22-year-old paralegal at his law firm. The divorce was swift but devastating. James moved to Seattle with his new girlfriend, now wife, and started a new family. He sends the bare minimum in child support and calls Miles only on birthdays and holidays. Sometimes. After the divorce, I had to downsize to a modest 2-bedroom apartment, rebuilding my life from scratch. My nursing degree became my lifeline, providing stability for Miles and me. Though we lack the luxuries my parents and sister enjoy, we've created a warm, loving home filled with laughter and understanding. Despite the tension, I kept the tradition of Sunday dinners at my parents' mansion. I wanted Miles to bond with his grandparents and aunt, hoping they'd eventually see past their rigid expectations and appreciate him for the incredible child he is. I believed family was family, and that acceptance would come. How wrong I was. Tessa Barton had just returned from a 2-week shopping spree in Paris, showering everyone with lavish gifts, everyone except Miles. Mom received a hand-painted silk scarf from a renowned French designer. George Barton got a rare bottle of cognac. And Miles? He got nothing. The sting of that moment cut deep. I watched as my son, bright-eyed and sensitive, tried to navigate the world around him, only to be met with ridicule from those who should have loved him unconditionally. As I sat there, the air thick with tension, I felt the weight of my family's cruelty. How could they not see the light in Miles? How could they dismiss his struggles as mere inconveniences? I was determined to protect him, to challenge this toxic family dynamic that sought to drown out his spirit. But would I find the strength to stand against the currents? Would I be able to create a safe harbor for my son? Stay tuned as I share the turning point that changed everything. Sunlight flickers across the antique silverware, casting shimmering reflections on Miles Monroe's untouched plate. It's as if the secrets of the family are trapped in that gleaming surface. Layla Monroe glances up, her heart racing. Her mother's laughter fills the air, but beneath it lies a cold, calculated glance exchanged between Tessa and George. Suddenly, Layla realizes she's not the only one watching Miles Monroe. She's being scrutinized too. A brittle silence settles over the table, and for the first time, Layla sees an alliance she never noticed before. The conversation isn't about Miles Monroe at all. It's a brutal dissection of her parenting. What if she's not the outlier, but the target? The weight of that thought crushes her. Miles Monroe, bright-eyed and sensitive, sits on a stack of cushions trying to reach the table. He carefully uses his fork, just as Layla practiced with him at home. But the tension in the air is palpable. When he needs his chicken cut into precise squares, her mother sighs dramatically. This is what happens when you coddle them. Each comment feels like a dagger, aimed at both Miles Monroe and Layla. As the meal progresses, the atmosphere thickens. Tessa arrives late, floating in with a tall, handsome man she introduces as Phipe, her new boyfriend from Paris. He's in luxury goods distribution, she announces as if that should impress them. Layla's heart sinks. While her son receives nothing, Tessa's lavish gifts overshadow their struggles. How could her family be so blind to the light in Miles Monroe? How could they dismiss his challenges as mere inconveniences? Each Sunday, Layla drives home, fighting back tears, promising herself it will be the last time. Yet she convinces herself that family connections are worth the emotional toll. But this Sunday feels different. As the meal continues, the air grows heavier. The laughter feels hollow, the smiles forced. Layla's resolve hardens. She will protect Miles Monroe. She will challenge this toxic family dynamic that seeks to drown out his spirit. But will she find the strength to stand against the currents? Will she create a safe harbor for her son? Stay tuned, as the turning point that changes everything is just around the corner. Layla Monroe's heart raced as the clamor of laughter echoed around her. The air was heavy with the sharp tang of citrus from Tessa's perfume, almost pungent in its intensity. Miles, her bright-eyed son, squinted and retreated, drawing himself into a small ball amidst the chaos, a fragile cocoon in a whirlwind of noise and their mother's shrill joy. The crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier, but all Layla could focus on were Miles's trembling hands beneath the tablecloth. Every brittle clink only deepened the ache in her chest, reminding her that this gathering was no ordinary dinner. It was a battleground of family dynamics, rife with cruelty hidden behind forced smiles. As conversation sparkled with superficiality, her father perked up, inquiring about investment opportunities, while Tessa fawned over her new boyfriend, Phipe. "He's from Paris," she exclaimed, as if the city alone elevated him. Meanwhile, Miles wriggled on cushions at the end of the table, trying to use his fork just as Layla had taught him. With every bite, the tension swelled. Tessa arrived fashionably late, and the shift in energy was palpable. Layla felt it weigh down like dark storm clouds. "Look what Fipe gave me." Tessa held up an ornate bottle with a flourish, declaring with pride that it was from an exclusive Parisian brand, worth $400. The whole room halted in enchanted awe, all eyes on the glimmering glass. "Let us smell it, darling," her mother chimed, eager to bask in the glow of luxury through anyone but her own daughter. With a sinking feeling, Layla glanced at Miles, knowing the overwhelming scent would invade his senses, causing discomfort. "Let's step outside for a moment," she murmured to him. But Tessa had already sprayed the room with a cloud of intoxicating jasmine, vanilla, and something musky, and Miles immediately covered his nose, eyes watering. "What's wrong with him?" Tessa snapped, her gaze accusing. "It's just a bit strong for him," Layla replied, placing a calming hand on her son's back. "He's sensitive to strong scents. It's nothing personal." Little did she know, that simple explanation would spark a revelation that would unravel their tightly knitted facade. How much longer could Layla shield her son from the harshness of family judgment? She felt her resolve harden. She would protect Miles from this toxic dynamic and, for the first time, challenge her family's cruel indifference. Could she muster the courage to create a haven for him? Desperation dialed with hope brewed a storm within her. A turning point was on the horizon, a clash that could either shatter them or bind them closer together. I lunged forward, knocking over my water glass in my rush to reach him. "What is wrong with you?" I shouted at Tessa Barton, who had stepped back, the perfume bottle still in her hand. "That has alcohol in it." What happened next is something I still struggle to process. As I grabbed napkins to wipe Miles Monroe's eyes, desperate to help him, I heard laughter. Actual laughter. I looked up in disbelief to see Helen Barton covering her mouth, her shoulders shaking with amusement. My father was chuckling, shaking his head as if witnessing a mildly amusing faux pas rather than an assault on his grandson. "If he's blind now, maybe he won't see. He's a burden, too," my mother said between giggles, dabbing at her eyes, as if this was the funniest thing she'd witnessed in years. George Barton raised his wine glass in a mock toast. "Well, at least he smells better now." Philippe, to his credit, wasn't laughing, but he wasn't helping either. He stared intently at his plate, apparently finding the roasted potatoes fascinating. Tessa Barton crossed her arms defensively. He needs to learn manners. I was just teaching him a lesson. Miles Monroe continued crying, his little hands rubbing frantically at his eyes, which only made it worse. The chemical scent of the perfume now clung to him, mixed with the salt of his tears. My hands trembled as I tried to help him, my own vision blurred by tears of rage and disbelief. "We need to wash his eyes," I said, my voice shaking. "Now." "Oh, for heaven's sake," Helen Barton sighed. "You're overreacting as usual. It's just perfume." I picked Miles Monroe up, his small body trembling against mine. "It's a chemical that went into his eyes. He needs medical attention." "Medical attention?" Tessa Barton scoffed. "Always the drama queen." I carried Miles Monroe to the kitchen sink, turning on the cold water and trying to flush his eyes as he struggled and cried. He was terrified in pain, and I couldn't seem to help him enough. I heard the dining room conversation resume as if nothing had happened. The clink of silverware against plates, Helen Barton's artificial laugh at something Fipe said. "We're leaving," I announced, returning to grab my purse and Miles Monroe's jacket. He clung to me, his face buried against my shoulder, still whimpering in pain. "But we haven't had dessert," Helen Barton protested. "I made creme brulee." "I don't care if you made gold-plated chocolate," I snapped. "My son needs a doctor. You always ruin these dinners with your overreactions," Tessa Barton said, now reapplying her lipstick as if assaulting a child was just a minor interruption to her evening. George Barton barely looked up from his meal. "Call us when you've calmed down, Cassie. You're being irrational." I stood in the doorway, my injured son in my arms, and looked at these people who shared my blood, but apparently not my humanity. What's irrational is that none of you see anything wrong with what just happened. As I buckled Miles Monroe into his car seat, his eyes red and swollen, his cheeks tracked with tears, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. The unease and discomfort I'd been suppressing for years crystallized into a cold, clear certainty. These people were not safe for my child or for me. "It's okay, buddy," I whispered, though nothing about this situation was okay. "We're going to get your eyes fixed up. Everything will be all right." But as I drove toward the emergency room, the sound of my family's laughter echoing in my mind, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The emergency room at Mercy General was busy that Sunday evening. I carried Miles Monroe through the automatic doors, his face pressed against my shoulder, small whimpers escaping with each breath. The fluorescent lights seemed to aggravate his pain, and he kept his eyes tightly shut. My son had perfume sprayed directly into his eyes. I told the triage nurse, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. It was about 20 minutes ago, as the fluorescent lights in the Riverside Children's Hospital flickered harshly. A child health specialist rested a comforting hand on Layla Monroe's shoulder. A silence wrapped around them, thick with unspoken truths. The nurse leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You know, you're not the first mother brought in by perfume burns from your family." The words hung in the air like the heavy scent of rain on pavement. Layla blinked, her heart pounding. This wasn't just an isolated incident. This was a cycle of cruelty. Miles Monroe, her sensitive, curious son, curled tighter against her. His bright eyes, now damp from both tears and the sting of perfume, reflected a world far too chaotic for him. That evening, as the din of laughter faded behind them, Layla felt the weight of every cruel joke, every dismissive comment from her family. They would laugh, while Miles was left to navigate a storm of sensory overload. As they settled into the stark examination room, Layla's resolve was firm. She was strong, resilient. The rush of emotions inside her begged for release, yet here, amidst the chaos of the hospital, she would protect Miles fiercely. "It's okay, buddy," she cooed, stroking his hair. "We're going to fix your eyes. Everything will be all right." But as they entered the sterile room, she fought the fear in her chest. Would they truly be okay? Dr. Patel arrived, her expression calm. "Can you tell me exactly what happened?" she asked. Layla hesitated for just a breath, but the truth surged forward. "My sister deliberately sprayed perfume in his eyes." A hush fell over the room. The doctor's neutral expression shifted momentarily as she glanced at the nurse. This was bigger than an accident. It was a pattern of abuse. How long had her family turned their backs on kindness? Dr. Patel's voice broke through the walls of Layla's thoughts. "Most perfume exposures don't cause permanent damage, but it can create significant chemical burns. We can't know the extent until we finish washing his eyes." Every word felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. In a corner, Miles sat bravely, allowing the doctor to examine his eyes with a special light. Yet even as they worked diligently, Layla felt a knot of anger and fear coiling tighter. Was this truly deliberate? Did your sister really intend to harm him? The question struck hard, forcing Layla to face the grim reality she'd been avoiding. "Yes," she breathed, the weight of the truth pressing against her chest. In that moment, Layla knew she had to break the cycle of pain. It wasn't just about Miles. It was about her, too. She would stand up against the toxic dynamics that had surrounded her for far too long. The laughter of her family faded to a dull roar, and she vowed to protect her son from a legacy of hurt. As they began to flush the burns from Miles' eyes, she felt the first flickers of hope. The world may have been harsh, but she would fight for a brighter path ahead, for both of them. The sterile brightness of the exam room pressed in on Layla Monroe as her mind raced, heart stuttering at the doctor's words. Miles whimpered beside her, blinking, tear tracks streaking down his cheeks. The cruel laughter of her family echoed in her mind. Layla's fists clenched, her breath caught between fear and fury. The social worker's impending arrival loomed. Would Miles finally be seen, or would their family secrets twist tighter around them? 3 sprays directly at his eyes, she recalled, anger bubbling inside her. Dr. Patel's professional demeanor slipped just slightly, revealing a flash of concern. And what was the response of others present? Layla swallowed hard. Her parents laughed. "If he goes blind, at least he won't see that he's a burden," her mother said. Her father added, "At least he smells better now." The doctor fell silent for a moment, then said quietly, "I'm going to have our social worker stop by to speak with you. This is a mandatory reporting situation." Mandatory reporting for potential child abuse. Layla felt the weight of those words. "This isn't an accusation against you," Dr. Patel continued, "but deliberate chemical exposure to a child's eyes is serious." As the reality sank in, memories flooded back, incidents she had minimized or excused. Tessa Barton accidentally tripping Miles at Christmas, causing him to fall against the coffee table. Tessa Barton not noticing him when she opened a door, hitting him hard enough to leave a bruise. Tessa Barton joking around when she spilled hot soup near his lap at a previous dinner. It wasn't just today. It was a pattern. After flushing Miles' eyes, Dr. Patel returned with eye drops and small patches. "The good news is I don't see evidence of corneal damage. He has chemical conjunctivitis, which is painful but should resolve without permanent effects. We'll patch his eyes for the night to let them rest. You'll need to apply these drops every 4 hours." While Miles rested on the examination bed, patches covering his injured eyes, a hospital social worker named Marissa came to speak with Layla. She was straightforward but compassionate, taking detailed notes about the incident and asking about previous concerning behaviors. "What you're describing is concerning," she said after Layla finished recounting everything. Layla's heart raced. Would this be the moment she finally broke the cycle of pain? Would she find the strength to protect Miles from a legacy of hurt? The laughter of her family faded to a dull roar, and she vowed to fight for a brighter path ahead, for both of them. Layla Monroe never imagined her family could be the source of such pain. As she sat in the sterile hospital room, the weight of Marissa's words hung heavy in the air. Deliberately harmful behavior. The phrase echoed in her mind, a stark reminder of the cruelty she had brushed aside for too long. Flashback to last spring. Layla stirred honey into Miles Monroe's warm milk, the kitchen light casting a golden glow. The sweet scent of honey mingled with the comforting aroma of warm milk. Miles tapped a gentle rhythm on the countertop, his bright eyes sparkling with curiosity. But the distant laughter of her parents in the living room felt like a storm cloud looming over their moment. Miles shrank back, clutching his cup tighter. Layla smoothed his hair, her heart racing with a mix of longing and dread. How could she protect him from the world outside this bubble of peace? Back in the hospital, her phone buzzed incessantly, pulling her from the memory. 3 missed calls from her mother, 2 from her father, and a barrage of texts flooded in. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill," her mother's message read. "You embarrassed all of us." No concern for Miles, just anger that she had disrupted their evening. Layla felt a surge of rage. How could they prioritize their image over her son's well-being? Marissa's voice broke through her thoughts. "Limit contact with these individuals," she advised gently. "Document everything." Layla nodded, her resolve hardening. She would not let her family's toxic dynamics dictate her son's future. As she sat beside Miles, who had finally drifted into a restless sleep, the hospital room felt both suffocating and liberating. The steady beeping of machines was a reminder of the fight ahead. A nurse named Tamika entered, checking Miles's vital signs with quiet efficiency. She paused at the door, her eyes filled with understanding. "Everything will be okay," Tamika whispered, as if sensing Layla's turmoil. Layla squeezed Miles's small hand, overwhelmed by guilt and determination. She would break the cycle of pain. She would protect him. The laughter of her family faded into the background, replaced by the promise of a brighter path ahead, for both of them. In that moment, Layla knew she was ready to challenge the harmful family dynamics that had haunted her for too long. Would she find the strength to shield Miles from a legacy of hurt? The answer lay in her unwavering love and fierce resolve. Layla Monroe's knuckles turned white around her phone, her heart racing as her mother's words landed like heavy blows. Outside, Miles Monroe slept fitfully, his small hand flexing against the blanket. The stillness of the night felt suffocating, each breath a reminder of the turmoil brewing inside her. Was this the moment she would finally sever ties, or would she say something that could change everything? "Layla Monroe, this has gone far enough." Her mother's voice crackled through the speaker, tight with annoyance. "You're blowing this completely out of proportion. Tessa Barton was just trying to teach Miles about proper social behavior. Call me back immediately." Layla's heart sank. Not once did her parents ask how Miles was doing, or express any remorse for what had happened. Instead, they were more concerned about appearances than the well-being of her son. The phone rang again, her mother's name flashing ominously on the screen. It was nearly 1 a.m. Layla answered, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" "Don't take that tone with me," her mother snapped. "I've been waiting for you to call and apologize for your behavior. Tessa Barton is absolutely beside herself." Layla almost laughed at the absurdity. "Apologize? Mom, Tessa Barton deliberately sprayed chemical perfume into Miles' eyes. He had to be treated for chemical conjunctivitis at the emergency room. The doctor reported it as potential child abuse." Silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. "Child abuse? How dare you?" In that moment, clarity washed over Layla. Her mother would always defend Tessa Barton, no matter how cruel her actions. "Mom, I want you to hear me clearly," she said, her voice steady. "What Tessa Barton did was deliberate and harmful. Your response was cruel." The tension crackled like static in the air. Layla felt the weight of years of denial lift, replaced by a fierce determination to protect Miles. She would no longer allow toxic family dynamics to dictate their lives. As she hung up, the rain began to patter softly against the window, the scent of wet earth filling the room. Layla looked at Miles, his small face vulnerable against the blue pillowcase, and made a promise. No more. No more would she prioritize family obligation over his safety and dignity. The path ahead would be difficult, but in that moment, she found a strength she never knew she had. Would she be able to break free from the chains of her family's cruelty? Only time would tell. Layla Monroe stood frozen, staring at the now silent phone. Her heart raced against the heavy stillness of the room. Miles' absence loomed like a ghost, his tiny shoes abandoned by the door, his favorite blanket crumpled on the couch. The familiar scent of rain lingered, mingling with her rising frustration. If she hung up now, would her family ever acknowledge the truth? She blinked back tears, her voice trembling as she uttered, "What will it take before you see him as I do?" When her mother's voice emerged on the other end, it was dripping with dismissiveness. "You're being ridiculous," she scoffed. "What about Sunday dinner next week? Your father has clients coming." The anger surged within Layla as she replied, "My son was injured. He's recovering from chemical burns. And you're worried about dinner with clients?" "Don't raise your voice at me," her mother shot back. "You've always been too sensitive." Layla's voice descended into disbelief. "I won't let this go. Miles Monroe will not be around either of you until there is acknowledgement of what happened and a sincere apology." Moments later, her father's name flashed on her screen. "Your mother is crying," he began, as if that mattered. "I don't know what you said to her, but this has gone far enough. You need to apologize. George Barton, Tessa, Barton hurt Miles deliberately. Don't be ridiculous. She was just teaching him manners." His words hit her like blows, each one knocking the wind out of her. Was that how they viewed her? As someone who used her child's suffering for attention? "What I think," she responded, her voice rising, "is that you've never understood me or my son. I would never mock a child's pain. Kindness matters more than family reputation." "Don't be melodramatic," he retorted coolly. "We expect to see you and Miles at the family gathering next weekend. Tessa Barton will be announcing her engagement." The tension crackled in the air like a live wire. The storm outside intensified, and Layla felt a shift within herself. No more would she prioritize toxic family dynamics over her son's dignity. This time, she was ready to fight for Miles. Could she really break free from the chains of familial cruelty? The answer hung in the damp air, heavy and uncertain, yet tinged with hope. Only time would tell. Their actions would indeed have consequences, just not the kind they were expecting. The next morning, I called into work and explained the situation to my supervisor, who immediately approved emergency family leave. Miles Monroe woke disoriented and in pain, confused about why he couldn't see and why his eyes hurt so badly. I explained as gently as I could, carefully administering his eye drops and making his favorite breakfast of dinosaur-shaped pancakes. "When can I take these off?" he asked, his small fingers reaching toward the patches. "Well, see Dr. Patel this afternoon, and she'll tell us," I explained. "Until then, they're helping your eyes get better." "Did Aunt Tessa Barton mean to hurt me?" he asked suddenly, his voice small. The question broke my heart. Children have an innate desire to believe the best of adults, especially family members. How do you explain deliberate cruelty to a 4-year-old? "Sometimes adults do wrong things," I said carefully. "What Tessa Barton did was wrong, and it hurt you. That's not okay no matter who does it." "Grandma and Grandpa laughed," he said, pushing his untouched pancakes around the plate. "Why did they think it was funny?" I took his small hand in mine. "They were wrong, too, buddy. Sometimes people we love make bad choices." Our appointment with Dr. Patel brought good news. Miles Monroe's eyes showed significant improvement, and she believed there would be no permanent damage. She removed the patches but prescribed continued use of the eye drops and recommended minimal screen time for the next week. "I've made a referral to Dr. Sampson," she told me quietly while a nurse was helping Miles Monroe choose a sticker. "She's an excellent child psychologist who can help Miles Monroe process what happened." "Thank you," I said, grateful for her thoroughness. "And what about the report? Child Protective Services has been notified," she confirmed. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, a serene contrast to the storm raging in Layla Monroe's heart. Her son, Miles, was still in bed, recovering from treatment. He had faced something unimaginable, a cruel attack from a family member. The scent of rain hovered in the air, a reminder that storms can pass. But what about the damage left behind? How do you protect your child when those you love the most turn into your worst nightmare? As Layla prepared breakfast, the soft rustle of the leaves outside was almost soothing. But it couldn't drown out Miles's small voice asking, "Did Aunt Tessa Barton mean to hurt me?" Each word pierced through her bravado. "Sometimes adults make bad choices," she replied, the weight of truth heavy on her shoulders. "That doesn't make it okay." His innocent eyes, filled with confusion, broke her heart. Later that day, as they visited Dr. Patel, hope seemed to blossom just as the flowers were beginning to bloom outside. "Good news, no permanent damage," the doctor reassured them, but the emotional scars remained. As Miles chose a sticker, Layla knew this was just the beginning. Child Protective Services were involved, but how deep would the consequences reach? Would they finally confront the toxic dynamics that had plagued their family for too long? With her heart racing like a wild drum, she made the calls that would change everything. Each dialed number brought her closer to support, calling Miles Monroe's doctor, scheduling therapy for herself, seeking legal advice. As she navigated these new waters, could this be the turning point? Or would her past come crashing back like a relentless tide? Jessica, a friend from work, brought dinner that night. "I can't believe your family would do this," she whispered, disbelief etched into her face. Layla could only nod, a million thoughts racing through her mind. "He keeps asking why Aunt Tessa Barton wanted to hurt him," she confessed, her voice a mix of frustration and sorrow. "How do you explain to a child that love is sometimes wrapped in cruelty? Family gatherings were a thing of the past for now." "I need to set boundaries," Layla affirmed, her voice steady but heavy with resolve. "I won't be around until there's accountability." Jessica's suggestion about her attorney brother offered a flicker of hope. In just 2 weeks, life began to shift. Each day brought new challenges, but also a newfound strength within Layla. As she confronted the painful web of family dynamics, the question loomed: could she finally redefine what family meant for her and Miles? Layla Monroe sat in the soft glow of Miles's nightlight, her journal open on her lap. The scent of rain drifted through the window, mingling with the quiet rustle of leaves outside. Just as she began to write, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Tessa Barton, the sister she had dreaded hearing from. As she scrolled through the text, her breath caught. Tessa revealed a truth that shattered everything Layla thought she knew. "I've been trapped in the golden mold since childhood," Tessa confessed. Panic attacks, guilt, and complicity in their mother's cruelty spilled from the screen. The family dynamic wasn't just toxic for Layla and Miles. It had imprisoned Tessa, too. Miles's small voice echoed in her mind. "Did Aunt Tessa Barton mean to hurt me?" Each word pierced her heart. "Sometimes adults make bad choices," she had replied, the weight of truth heavy on her shoulders. "But how do you explain to a child that love can wear a mask of cruelty?" At Riverside Children's Hospital, Dr. Sampson assured her, "Miles is resilient." But he needed consistency, clear boundaries, and reassurance that he would be safe. Layla's own sessions with Dr. Bennett were equally enlightening. "You're describing a classic golden child scapegoat dynamic," Dr. Bennett explained. Tessa was the perfect child, while Layla was the family problem. Now, those roles were extending to Miles, who was being labeled as difficult. Daniel, Jessica's brother, offered practical legal advice over coffee. "You have grounds for a restraining order against your sister if necessary," he said. "Document everything." So, Layla began to keep a detailed journal, recording not just the perfume incident but every troubling interaction. Patterns emerged: Tessa's accidents that only seemed to affect Miles, their parents' consistent minimization of his needs, and the subtle put-downs about her parenting. Jessica introduced her to a single-parent support group at a community center. There, she found others who understood the challenges of raising children alone. "Blood doesn't define family," said Monica, a single mother who had cut ties with her abusive parents. "Family is defined by love, respect, and safety. You're doing the right thing by protecting your son." With each passing day, Layla felt a newfound strength. Could she finally redefine what family meant for her and Miles? The journey ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to fight for their dignity, to challenge the harmful dynamics that had haunted them for too long. With Sunday dinners at my parents' townhouse in Maple Grove no longer on the calendar, I took a leap, the kind of leap that can feel both terrifying and liberating. I started crafting new traditions for Miles. Adventure Sundays, exploring parks, museums, and all the hidden gems in our city. Gone were the days of him trying to conform to my parents' suffocating expectations. Now, those outings were pure joy. Miles's eyes healed beautifully, just as Dr. Patel had assured me they would. And I noticed something even more incredible. His anxious moments faded. No longer was he living under the weight of my family's relentless scrutiny. We could finally breathe freely. One evening, as I was slicing onions for dinner, the phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. My heart raced when I picked it up. "Hey, it's Megan," my cousin said. My mind raced back. Over a year since we last spoke. I heard what happened with Tessa Barton and Miles, she continued, her tone steady but serious. Are you okay? She asked. I hesitated, my instincts warning me to be cautious. We're managing, I replied, a lump forming in my throat. How do you know? Tessa Barton's been spreading lies claiming you're unstable, Megan said explicitly, but I don't believe her. That declaration hit me. My mom always said Tessa Barton was just like Aunt Ruth, never kind to kids. Suddenly, it hit me like a thunderclap. The rigidity of my past echoed through the generations, a haunting reminder. Megan, what do you mean? I barely whispered, feeling the past claw at my heart. You're not the first person she's hurt, Megan revealed, memories flooding back. Remember my brother's wedding 5 years ago? Tessa Barton spilled red wine on my daughter's flower girl dress just before the ceremony, all because she was jealous of the attention Lily was getting. And when I confronted her, everyone told me I was overreacting. My chest tightened. As her words settled in, the gravity of what lay ahead pushed against my bones. What were the implications of this family truth? How deep did the cruelty run? And would I be able to shield Miles from its reach? In the dim kitchen glow, Layla Monroe hesitated, her pen perched above the final line in her journal. Beyond the hall, she could hear Miles's soft breathing, a fragile peace, but tension still hung in the air like a storm cloud. Layla gazed at the scarlet ink on the page, her heart pounding like a drum. Years of family struggles and secrets pushed against her, begging for release. Was she truly ready to face those who had hurt her son? Or had the danger already taken too much from her? By the end of the call, Megan had revealed hair-raising accounts of Tessa Barton's calculated cruelty. There was a pattern, she said, her voice tinged with regret, reaching back years, affecting multiple family members. Layla's heart sank as she absorbed the weight of Megan's words. What if they had all stayed silent too long? Later that night, after tucking Miles into bed, Layla took a deep breath and sat down with her journal. She meticulously documented Megan's revelations, each line bringing clarity. The pattern was glaring. Tessa Barton's hurtful behavior had festered over time, enabled by her parents' blind obedience. It became evident to Layla, this was not just a family disagreement, it was a toxic abyss. Her decision to shield Miles from them wasn't merely protective, it was a necessity. With this revelation came a fresh sense of purpose, a determination to shield her son from harm. And for the first time in ages, she felt empowered. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but she had the resolve to dismantle the facade of family harmony. As she closed her journal that night, a feeling washed over her. Peace. Not because everything was resolved, but because she trusted herself to act, to protect Miles in a world filled with chaos. 3 weeks after the incident, she had just lulled Miles to sleep when a furious knocking jolted her heart. Cautiously, she opened the door to find Tessa Barton standing there, impeccably dressed, her expression laced with condescension. What did she want now? Would this confrontation lead to a reckoning, or would it threaten everything Layla worked so hard for? The answer loomed heavy in the air. "We need to talk," she announced, attempting to push past me into the apartment. I blocked the doorway. "This isn't a good time. Miles Monroe is napping. This isn't about Miles Monroe. It's about you spreading lies about me." Her voice rose sharply. "My reputation is on the line." I kept my voice deliberately calm and quiet. "I haven't spread any lies. Now please leave before you wake Miles Monroe." Tessa Barton's eyes narrowed. "You told doctors I abused your kid. You got some social worker involved. You're not answering Mom and George Barton's calls. You missed the engagement announcement. You're tearing the family apart with your dramatics. What happened wasn't a lie. Tessa Barton, you deliberately sprayed perfume in Miles Monroe's eyes. That's not something I'm willing to pretend didn't happen." Her face flushed with anger. "It was a joke. God, you've always been so uptight. And now you're threatening me with some kind of legal action. Mom told me you're talking to lawyers. I noticed my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, watching discreetly from her doorway, clearly concerned about the escalating confrontation. Remembering Daniel's advice about documentation, I reached for my phone in my pocket and subtly started recording. Tessa Barton, what you did caused Miles Monroe to need emergency medical treatment. The doctors were legally required to report it. I'm not pressing charges, but I am establishing boundaries to protect my son. Boundaries? She scoffed. You mean cutting off the family that supported you through every failure? Where would you be without Mom and George Barton's help after James left you? Probably in some shelter. I took a deep breath, refusing to be baited. I appreciate the help they've provided, but it doesn't give anyone the right to hurt my child. I'm warning you, Layla Monroe, she hissed, jabbing a finger toward my face. If you don't stop this nonsense, I'll sue you for defamation. I have connections, important friends. I can make life very difficult for you. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality. Philip's family has connections in the hospital board. One word from them and your nursing career could hit some major obstacles. Is that what you want? I stood my ground even as my heart raced. What I want is for my son to be safe. What I want is for my sister to understand that deliberately causing a child pain isn't a joke. You know what your problem is? You've always been jealous of me, always. And now you're using your kid to get attention and sympathy. It's pathetic. Her voice had risen again, and I heard Miles Monroe stirring in his bedroom. You need to leave now, I said firmly, or what she challenged, or I'll call the police and report you for harassment. Tessa Barton laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. Go ahead, see who they believe. The successful executive or the struggling single mom with mental health issues. Mental health issues. That's what Mom and George Barton have been telling everyone, that you've been unstable since the divorce, imagining slights against your precious little boy. Everyone's so concerned about you, Cassie. Her tone made the concern sound like an accusation. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I had been holding back, hoping for reconciliation, believing that somewhere beneath the cruelty was the sister I'd once loved. But her words revealed the truth. She saw nothing wrong with what she'd done. Worse, she and my parents were actively working to discredit me rather than acknowledge the harm they'd caused. I think we're done here, I said quietly. We're done when I say we're done, Tessa Barton snapped. You're going to call Mom and George Barton today. You're going to apologize for missing the engagement announcement. You're going to stop this ridiculous drama about the perfume, and you're going to bring Miles Monroe to the family portrait session next month. He needs to be there looking happy and normal. Do you understand? I stared at my sister, really stared, and saw through the facade. The confident, successful woman everyone admired was just a mask. Beneath it, she was a woman clinging to control, sacrificing basic humanity for appearances. What I understand, I said, my voice steady, is that I've been recording this entire conversation. You've just admitted to knowing about the incident, downplayed the harm you caused a child, and threatened my career. You came here to intimidate me, not to check on your nephew. The color drained from Tessa Barton's face. You can't record me without my permission. That's illegal. Actually, in this state, single-party consent is perfectly legal, I replied, recalling Daniel's words. Who the hell is Daniel? My attorney. I wasn't entirely truthful. Daniel had given me advice but wasn't officially representing me. Tessa Barton didn't need to know that. You got a lawyer? For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. I've also been gathering statements from other family members about your behavior. Cousin Megan had quite a lot to share about the flower girl dress incident at her brother's wedding. Tessa Barton's expression hardened again. No one will believe any of this. You're nothing in this family, just the disappointing daughter with the defective kid. Maybe so, I shot back, but I have documentation, medical records, witness statements, and now this recording. What do you have? Mom and George Barton's protection? That only goes so far. You'll regret this, she warned, backing toward the elevator. When you're all alone with your weird kid, no family, no support, You'll regret crossing me." After she left, I leaned against the door, heart pounding, surprised by my own boldness. I checked the recording. It had captured everything clearly, including her threats and her admission of guilt. That evening, I sent the recording to Daniel. He called me immediately after listening. A silence deepened between me and Tessa, pressing in with the weight of unresolved secrets. My grip on my phone tightened while Miles's muffled laughter drifted in from the hallway. A sharp, innocent contrast. Tessa's composure cracked, fear mixing with defiance in her eyes. I inhaled, torn between relief and dread. Just as Tessa opened her mouth to speak, the front door rattled. Who was it? Would this reveal finally shatter the family's uneasy truce or push everything into chaos? Layla Monroe stood frozen, her heart racing as she peered through the half-open doorway. There was Miles, her bright-eyed son, twisting the fabric of his shirt, listening intently for footsteps beyond the silence. The air felt thick with anxiety, crackling between her ribs. Suddenly, Brooke's phone buzzed on the table, an unknown number. Layla exchanged a loaded glance with Daniel. Was this the moment everything shifted? Or would the family's control tighten even harder? "This is significant," Daniel said, his voice steady. "She essentially admitted to the incident while threatening you. With the medical documentation and witness statements, we have a strong case for a protective order if needed." "Is that what you recommend?" Layla asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think we should file a formal complaint with Child Protective Services first," he replied. "Your sister's behavior shows a pattern of deliberate harm toward Miles. Now she's escalated to threats against you. CPS needs to have this on record." The next day, with Daniel's guidance, Layla filed a formal complaint against Tessa Barton. She included the medical records from Miles's emergency room visit, her detailed account of the incident, and statements from Megan and 2 other family members who had witnessed Tessa Barton's concerning behavior. The response was swift. Within 24 hours, a CPS investigator named Brooke Matthews contacted her to schedule an interview. "Based on what you've provided, we'll be conducting a thorough investigation," Brooke explained, her tone professional yet compassionate. "This will include interviewing other witnesses and family members." 3 days later, her parents called in rapid succession, their messages increasingly frantic. "What have you done?" her mother demanded. "Some government worker called asking questions about Tessa Barton. This has gone too far, Layla." Her father was more direct. "This needs to stop immediately. I've called Marcus Jenkins. We can make this go away with the right donation, but you need to withdraw your complaint." Layla didn't return their calls. Instead, she focused on Miles, whose nightmares about the incident had finally begun to subside thanks to his sessions with Dr. Sampson. Just when she thought she could breathe, an unexpected email from Philippe, Tessa Barton's French boyfriend, landed in her inbox. What could he possibly want? Would this be the twist that changed everything? Or would it plunge them deeper into chaos? Layla Monroe's hands trembled as she gripped the printed email. The dim kitchen light flickered above, casting shadows across Miles's toy-strewn path. For the first time, the isolation wasn't hers alone. Others were speaking up, the facade crumbling in quiet ripples. But as Miles appeared in the doorway, wide-eyed and curious, the question hung in the charged air. If the truth was finally surfacing, what would it cost them? The subject line read simply, "You should know. I have ended my relationship with Tessa Barton." Philippe's words struck like thunder. He wrote, "What I witnessed at your parents' home was disturbing. I told myself it was a family matter, not for me to judge. But after learning of similar incidents in her past, I cannot in good conscience proceed with our engagement. I should have spoken up when she hurt your son. For that failure, I apologize." His revelation sent a chill down Layla Monroe's spine. Tessa Barton had been asked to take a leave of absence from her company pending an investigation into her conduct. One of her colleagues, whose child had been treated by Layla Monroe at the clinic, recognized Tessa Barton's name from hospital gossip and raised concerns with HR. The carefully constructed image of her sister was beginning to crack, revealing the reality beneath. As Daniel had explained, when behavior like this is finally exposed, it often turns out that others have seen red flags but were afraid to speak up. 2 weeks into the CPS investigation, the investigator confirmed Layla Monroe's worst fears. Tessa Barton had a history of concerning behavior toward children, systematically minimized and hidden by their parents' influence. "Your parents are attempting to influence the investigation," Brooke Matthews informed Layla Monroe during a follow-up meeting. "They've made calls to my supervisor and offered to make a substantial donation to the department." "That sounds like them," Layla Monroe acknowledged, her heart heavy. "Sadly, such attempts only strengthen our concern about the family dynamic," Brooke assured her. "We take these cases very seriously, regardless of a family's social or financial status." By the end of the month, the protective order against Tessa Barton was approved. But as Layla Monroe looked at Miles, who was still navigating his own world of sensory challenges, she knew the battle was far from over. Would the truth finally set them free, or would it bind them in ways they never imagined? The room was hushed, wrapped in the heavy scent of rain, its rhythm echoing like a heartbeat. Layla Monroe felt the weight of her worries settle in the air. After Tessa Barton's world had publicly unraveled, she was left in the wake of sadness. Yet resolve brewed beneath her surface. Suddenly, a vibration jolted her from her thoughts. It was a message from Miles's therapist. "Miles wants to speak in family mediation." Her heart raced. A rush of emotion swirled within her. The grief, the fear, they began to lift. This story wasn't just about her anymore. Miles wanted his voice to be heard. As she sat there, the rain's soft tap against the window contrasted with the turmoil inside her. Layla had fought tirelessly against the cruelty her family inflicted on her son. She had challenged those toxic dynamics, carving a path toward healing. Now, the narrative had shifted, illuminating Miles's own struggles. Side by side, they'd faced a brave new world where Miles, curious and bright-eyed, could finally express the thoughts held within. The scent of resilience lingered, urging them both forward. She recalled the heavy silence after the protective order was issued against Tessa. It had felt like a storm passing through. Tessa was forbidden from coming near them. No calls, no visits. But Layla knew the struggle wasn't over. Her parents might not be named in that order, but their influence loomed like dark clouds. Layla took a deep breath, feeling energy stir within her. The consequences for Tessa were flowing in, her sister's cherished image crumbling like autumn leaves. The envy and pride that had once painted their family history were stripped bare, revealing the complexities they had tried to ignore. Reflecting on her parents' reactions, Layla felt both sadness and resolve. "You don't think this is serious?" she had asked her mother. "A simple misunderstanding doesn't send a child to the emergency room." Silence had met her words, heavy and unyielding. The silence felt like a wall, but behind it lay the strength she had built for Miles. In the end, it was about accountability and protecting the innocent. It wasn't revenge, it was justice wrapped in compassion. Would truth finally deliver the freedom they both craved? Or would it bind them together in unexpected ways? With every step toward mediation, she felt the weight lift. Miles was ready to reclaim his narrative, a brilliant thread of light breaking through the shadows. Together, they would navigate this unfamiliar landscape, ready to face whatever lay ahead. 6 months passed, marking half a year since the Sunday dinner that changed everything. Spring had turned to summer, and Miles Monroe and I were picnicking in the park near our new apartment. Yes, new apartment. One of many changes we'd embraced. Miles Monroe was running through the sprinklers with another boy he'd befriended his laughter carrying across the grassy field. His eyes were completely healed with no lasting physical damage, just as Dr. Patel had predicted. The emotional healing had taken longer, but was evident in his increasingly confident interactions with other children and his decreased anxiety in new situations. I watched him play from our picnic blanket where I sat with Jessica and Daniel. What had begun as professional advice from Daniel had gradually evolved into friendship, and then cautiously something more. He was different from any man I'd dated before, patient, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in both Miles Monroe's well-being and mine. "He's doing so well," Jessica observed, watching her nephew as she called Miles Monroe, though there was no official relation race through the water. "You both are. We've had good help," I acknowledged, smiling at both of them. The support system we'd built over the past months had been crucial to our healing process. My promotion at work had been unexpected but welcome. A move to a leadership position in the pediatric department that came with better hours and increased pay. The financial stability meant I no longer had any dependence on my parents' occasional assistance, which had always come with strings attached. We had established new traditions and routines. Sunday dinners at my parents' mansion had been replaced by Sunday brunches with our chosen family, Jessica and Daniel, friends from the single parents group, and occasionally Megan and her daughter when they visited from Chicago. These gatherings were relaxed and joyful with no crystal glasses to worry about or rigid expectations of behavior. Miles Monroe continued his sessions with Dr. Sampson, though they had reduced to twice monthly. As his progress steadied, he's developing healthy boundaries. She had noted in our last parent consultation. He's learning to trust his instincts about people and situations, which is exactly what we want to see. My own therapy with Dr. Bennett had been equally valuable, helping me recognize and begin to heal from patterns established long before Miles Monroe was born. "Family dynamics are powerful," she had explained. "They shape how we see ourselves and the world, but they can be changed when we become aware of them." As for my family of origin, the situation had evolved in unexpected ways. After 3 months of silence, my parents had reached out through a family therapist. They had begun seeing a step I never expected them to take. The therapist explained that they were beginning to recognize their role in enabling Tessa Barton's behavior and wanted to work toward possible reconciliation. "It's a process," the therapist cautioned. "They're still struggling with many aspects of accountability, but they've taken the first step." We agreed to a carefully structured meeting in the therapist's office. It was awkward and emotionally charged with moments of defensiveness from both my parents, but also glimpses of genuine regret, particularly from my father. "I failed you," he admitted at one point, his voice uncharacteristically unsteady. "I failed Miles Monroe. I was so focused on maintaining a certain image that I lost sight of what really matters." Helen Barton found it harder to acknowledge her role, still clinging to the belief that family problems should remain private. But she, too, had moments of clarity. "I always favored Tessa Barton," she said during our second session. "I saw myself in her the beauty, the social grace. I didn't know how to connect with you because you were so different from me. That's not an excuse. It's just I'm trying to understand why I made the choices I did." The sun dipped low, casting golden rays over the park, where laughter danced in the air. Miles Monroe, with his bright eyes and infectious joy, sprinted back to our picnic blanket, his cheeks flushed with happiness. "Can Daniel come for story time tonight?" he asked, plopping down beside me, his excitement palpable. Daniel, a steady presence in our lives, smiled warmly. "If it's okay with your mom." I nodded, a wave of warmth washing over me. Daniel had never tried to replace Miles Monroe's father. He simply showed up, offering kindness and consistency, qualities I once thought were just dreams. As the evening settled in, I tucked Miles Monroe into bed, his small form nestled under the covers. After Daniel left, I found myself on the balcony, gazing at the twinkling city lights. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of challenges, but they had also sparked a transformation within me. I discovered strengths I never knew I had. I had built a life that felt real, not just a performance. The most profound lesson? Family isn't just about blood. For years, I believed that keeping up appearances was everything. But now, I knew true family is defined by love, respect, and safety. I had chosen my son's well-being over toxic ties. In doing so, I didn't just protect him, I showed him what courage and self-respect look like. We were far from a full reconciliation with my parents, but small steps were being taken. They attended every therapy session, even asking if they could send Miles Monroe a birthday gift. I inspected it carefully before giving it to him. Tessa Barton, my sister, remained absent, the protective order still in place. My parents said she had moved to California after being asked to resign from her job. She never acknowledged her wrongs or showed remorse for what she did to Miles Monroe. The distance, both physical and emotional, was for the best. As I reflected on our journey, I remembered the sharp scent of antiseptic from Riverside Children's Hospital. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I held Miles Monroe's small hand, tracing patterns on my palm. Each touch was a plea for safety, a silent vow I felt deep in my bones. The grinding hush of my parents' voices seeped through the walls, promises of change given and withdrawn. In those moments, my resolve to protect Miles Monroe crystallized, an ache, a vow pressed between heartbeat and breath. Now, as I watched Miles Monroe thrive, I knew we were on the right path. Together, we were rewriting our story, one filled with hope, resilience, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. I had broken a cycle that might otherwise have continued into the next generation. There was still healing to be done, boundaries to maintain, and new challenges to face. But sitting there in the quiet evening, I felt a peace I had rarely experienced in my adult life. The peace that comes from living authentically and protecting what truly matters regardless of external pressures or expectations. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love? What helped you find the strength to set boundaries with family? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to support more content like this. Remember, true family is defined by love and respect, not obligation. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to protect what matters most in your life.